Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes because it tends to take a while for everyone to come into the meeting. So we're just going to give it a couple of minutes to make sure that everyone has managed to make it into the room. So we'll start at about sort of 2 minutes past. We'll start properly. For those of you just joining now, just a note to say that we are going to start at about 2 minutes past because it sometimes takes a couple of minutes for everyone in the waiting room to filter through to the main room. So just bear with us for another sort of 30 seconds or so and we'll be starting at 2 minutes past. And just again, sorry for people that have been on the line since 11, just to say that it can take a couple of minutes for everyone to filter through from the waiting room into the main room. So we're just going to start at 2 minutes past. So bear with us while we wait for everyone to filter through and we'll be starting shortly. And I think, yeah, that's 2 minutes past and I think the numbers have stabilised. So I think we're ready to go. So firstly, thank you very much for joining us this morning and welcome to this East West Railway Company online session concentrating on the section of the line between the Shelfords and then into Cambridge. Following the launch of the second round of non-statutory consultation on Wednesday the 31st of March, this is the first session, but not the only session, we're holding in your area, focusing on the issues around your area, and to really take you through the proposals in detail and address any initial questions that people have got about the options and proposals. We'll start this session with a presentation that will run for 25 to 30 minutes, and then we've got time for a Q&A before we wrap up with some next steps. We should be done inside the hour. My name's Hannah Staunton. I'm Head of External Affairs at the East West Railway Company, and I'll just quickly take the opportunity to introduce you to some of my colleagues who we've got here today. So joining us today, we also have Ian Parker, who's the Programme Delivery Director, John Hillman, the Programme Director and Railway Ops Specialist, John Worthington, our Construction Director, Paul Sparrow, Programme Manager for this section of the line, Michael Shanks, our Head of Environment, Martin Phillips, our Head of Customer Strategy, Chris Cullerton, our Deputy Head of Operations, Jorn Pace, who's our Land and Property Manager, and Philip Allison, who's a Senior Advisor from our Land and Property Consultant. We've also got some support here from people who support my team, primarily taking notes and running the slides and doing some more of the technical pieces as well. So just before we start the presentation proper, I'm going to run you through some brief housekeeping on Teams Live. Not everyone's used Teams Live. I think a lot of people are more familiar with Zoom. So it might be worth just running you through a couple of bits. Because of the number of people we've got joining the call, everyone will be muted throughout. But that does mean that you can take the opportunity to use the chat bar and the Q&A features. So you'll find the bar below the Q&A feature where my colleague, I believe, has just posted a message, or if they haven't, they will do very soon, just to highlight where the Q&A is. Please use this feature to ask questions. You can send questions through at any time during the presentation, although obviously we hope that the slides will address your inquiries. In the Q&A session, we will aim to address any questions you've got so far on the consultation. So do pop them through. I will say though, we will be grouping questions together in like sort of topic areas. And don't forget, we've also got live chat events going on the side as well, which are happening throughout the consultation. So if we don't manage to get round to the specific question you asked, you can go to a live chat event. We will also be posting answers to the key questions that we're getting on the website. We'll start doing that next week. You can also email us if we didn't get around to answering your question. Where possible, if a question's come through and we can respond to you directly, we will, although I'm aware that a lot of people prefer to join these calls anonymously, so we won't necessarily have everyone's contact details, we won't necessarily be able to do that, but where possible, we'll try. So Last piece of housekeeping before we get started, please note that we are recording these sessions, so therefore will not reference any names or descriptions directly, even if they're provided in the question, to comply with GDPR. So please just do bear that in mind, that we've got some compliance that we need to make sure is kept to around GDPR. So that's all the housekeeping we've got. What we're going to cover today in this meeting is a brief introduction to East West Rail, then broadly what we're consulting on in this consultation, and then we'll go into more detail about, as I said before, about the proposals in your specific area, and our technical teams will come in and talk to you in more detail about that. We'll then go into the Q&A session, and then we'll wrap up with how you can get involved in the consultation. So East West Rail is a proposed new rail link which will connect communities across the piece between Oxford, Milton Keynes, Bedford and Cambridge. And the key thing there is connecting communities, and there's a wide range of communities across that whole piece. It's not just about the two end states, although obviously in your area you'll be very interested in what we're proposing for Cambridge. East West Rail has a number of key benefits really to communities across that piece, providing quicker and cheaper travel for communities across the area and improving connectivity are really the key ones. You can see here the indicative timing of transport. Now we've done this between Oxford and Cambridge, but obviously, as I said before, we are talking about a lot of journeys in between. And most of those areas do suffer from the same problem for east-west connectivity. So if you are travelling between Oxford and Cambridge, East West Rail will take around an hour and a half, depending on the final alignments and the final interventions that are chosen. Car at the moment, you're looking at probably about 2 hours for that journey. Train, you're going up to 3 hours really, because you're dipping down into London across and up again. And coach, really 4 hours, but especially with car and coach, you really are dependent on roads. And one of the key benefits of East West Rail really is taking people off roads. So quicker and cheaper travel for people across the area, and really making sure that there's sustainable and reliable connectivity for communities across that whole piece is absolutely critical. Some other benefits of East West Rail, making it cheaper and quicker to get around, clearly is very important, and that's connecting people to a wide range of things: jobs, homes, families, businesses, connecting to suppliers and customers. Helping support the economy is really important with East West Rail as well, making places much more appealing for people wanting to start and grow their businesses, attracting and retaining the best talent in the region. Really, you're doing that by increasing the commutable areas. You're commuting the distance, you're increasing the distance by which people can reach potential workers, potential jobs and potential customers as well, and that's really important. In doing that, it supports the ability for people to live slightly further afield. So I think we all know that there are some hot pockets in the area where housing is very expensive and not genuinely affordable for people. So you really are increasing the commutable zone for a lot of people. Job opportunities is critical. Even in the next few years, in the section of the line being delivered far west of where we're talking today, we're expecting to employ around just under 1,000 people within the next couple of years directly, and another 500 in the wider supply chain, which will inject, even while we're building East West Rail, about 1.1 billion into the local economy via the supply chain. And that's going to be really, really important as we look to the Build Back Better coming out of COVID. We're aiming to deliver a net zero carbon railway and to achieve biodiversity net gain as part of those proposals. We have our Head of Environment on with us today. Environment is absolutely critical to us at East West Rail, and making sure that we are leaving the environment in a better state than we found it is something that we think about an awful lot, and how we can do that. The consultation that we are running at the moment, as I said before, it launched on the 31st of March and it will go all the way through to the 9th of June. We're consulting on two main themes, two main topics over those 10 weeks. And the consultation documents that are available online, or you can ask us for copies, covers two key areas. The customer experience and railway operations, so how will the railway actually work, and what do customers want from their experience of a railway? And then the proposed infrastructure developments. The proposed infrastructure developments are broken down into 6 areas, so that in the documentation you can find the pieces that are most interesting and most relevant to you. The consultation itself, therefore, goes all the way from Oxford to Cambridge this time. When we came and spoke to you in 2019, we were really concentrating on the area between Bedford and Cambridge. The programme has gone through some changes since then, and a few months ago we launched what we call the integrated programme, which is how we better deliver a whole rail line between Oxford and Cambridge. And you'll see from this map, that's Oxford in the bottom left corner and Cambridge in the top right corner. What we're doing with this consultation, therefore, is we've brought together all of those pieces together in a single consultation, because we want to build a truly integrated railway that really serves the communities as well as it possibly can. And then a bit more detail on that, really. As I said before, when you break down the 6 areas that we're consulting on for the infrastructure development, we have these key 6 areas. We've got the Oxford to Bicester section, which is for us Project Section A, Bletchley and the Marsden Vale line, the Bedford area, Clapham Green to the Evansdons, Harleton to Hawkston, and then the Shelfords into Cambridge. And that part, Project Section F, is going to be some of what we talk about today. So I think at this point I'm going to hand over to my colleagues who will talk to you in a little bit more detail about the proposals. So without further ado, I hand over to Martin, our Head of Customer, who will talk about the customer experience and railway ops piece.
Thank you, Hannah. My name is Martin Phillips. I'm Head of Customer Strategy at East West Rail. Good morning to you all. This part of the consultation concentrates on what the customer experience will be and the railway operations part. So we're interested in hearing views from people about how they're going to use this railway, whether that's for work, education, visiting family and friends. We want your views. So we're looking to set a new standard for customer experience on a whole route basis for all the communities that we're going to be serving. And it's really important that we hear your views during this consultation so that we can design in capability that helps us achieve those that customer experience. And this includes the train service itself, calling patterns, the train service specification and how we integrate with other services, the experience at stations, what facilities communities and customers would expect, the on-train experience itself, and really importantly, the interaction with colleagues, how staff and colleagues that work on East West Rail, on the trains, on the supporting functions on the trains actually interact with customers, and really importantly as well the way that we deliver and make available customer information. So I'll hand back, thank you very much, to Ian Parker.
Yeah, thanks Martin. So I'm the Programme Delivery Director for East West Rail, and I'm responsible for the design and the construction of the railway. Next slide please. Thanks. So the section of the route that we're covering today runs from Hawkston Road level crossing, more or less, right into Cambridge Station. And while most of the route between Bedford and Cambridge is a new railway, this section uses existing lines for the most part to enter Cambridge itself, or existing routes anyway. We'll be following the Shepworth branch line and then part of the West Anglia main line to achieve that. And over the next few slides, what I want to tell you about in a bit more detail is our plans for this section of the route. I think I should just explain we're at quite an early stage in design, and more detail is going to be provided to you at further consultation later in the year or next year. But hopefully what this is going to do is leave you with a better understanding of our aims. And really in developing the solution, we've had to ensure that we don't compromise existing services and that there's sufficient capacity for both our railway and for other users of the railway on this section. So if we move to the next slide, please. What we're going to show next is the section of the route overall that we're discussing today. So I'm going to talk in a minute about our plans for the level crossing at Hawkston Road, which may need to close, and about the route into Cambridge along the West Anglia main line. And there we're going to need to increase the capacity of the railway by adding new tracks. So the current Shelford branch railway is used by GTR trains. I think some people refer to it as the King's Cross line because that's where it terminates. And they already provide a service of 6 trains an hour along that line. And what we want to do is add a further 4 east-west rail trains per hour in each direction. And actually our assessment is that the existing railway can, in this section, accommodate the extra traffic without us needing to add new tracks. Next slide, please. Thanks. However, we do need to do some work at Hoxton Road level crossing, as I indicated before. So this crossing, as you'll know, is on the road between Hoxton and Little Shelford, and we know it's an important local route which is used by bus services as well as by private cars. And we haven't yet decided if the crossing needs to close permanently, but already it's accommodating 11 trains an hour, and we're going to need to add another 4 in each direction. So we're looking at options for this crossing, and we're considering whether it can be replaced by something else like a road bridge or a pedestrian bridge, or whether there are other practical alternatives. And I suppose it's fair to say, you know, we realise that just simply closing a road isn't something that many people would particularly welcome. But with 15 trains passing every hour and the barrier downtime becoming quite excessive, we do need to look at this as an option. But we also realise that putting a bridge there has environmental impacts as well. So, you know, we'd welcome your views as local people who use the crossing. So next slide, please. Which now takes us onto the Shelford branch junction. And this is where the King's Cross line meets the twin track West Anglia main line on its route into Cambridge. And what we've got here is 4 lines merging into 2, which is not enough to provide the capacity for the existing services and the new services that we're adding. And as a result, what we're proposing is 2 additional lines to make the route into Cambridge a 4-track railway. So we've then got to decide what we do at Shelford Junction, and there we need to look at whether we create an at-grade junction. It's a bit like a crossroads or a T-junction on a highway, or by grade separating, a bit like the way we'd build a motorway junction, if you can imagine that, where one line runs over the top of the other. If we join at grade, then we'd need to build 2 additional tracks into Cambridge on the western side of the railway, which means really tending towards platforms on the western side of Cambridge station. If we grade separate, we can build our additional lines on the east side of the railway and use platforms on the eastern side of Cambridge station. And, you know, why does this matter? Well, in Cambridge station, there's not enough platform space at the moment, so we'll need to build new through platforms in the station. And actually, that's easiest to achieve on the eastern side of the station, where currently there are sidings that we could use, the land we could use. But we've still got more work to do on this to decide what's best. Either way, we don't envisage this is going to result in the loss of residential properties at this junction. Moving on to the next slide then, please, and moving further north from Shelford branch junction. We're going to need to create 2 new tracks, as I mentioned before, over a length of just under a mile, 1.3 kilometres. Up as far as the approach to Cambridge South Station, which is not there at the moment. Of course, it's a new station which Network Rail are proposing. It's just north of Addenbrooks Road, and we want our trains to stop at this station. As part of their proposals, Network Rail are going to add 2 new tracks between Addenbrooks Road and between Long Road Sixth Form College. And our plan is that we'll use these to accommodate the extra traffic. Cambridge South Station is going to be built first before our scheme, but obviously we're working with Network Rail to just make sure that the station can accommodate our trains as well as theirs. And in designing the route, what we also need to look at is how we impact on the 9 Wells Reserve and obviously the scheduled monument to the west of the railway. And again, we need to do more work to ensure that we minimise our impact there. Moving on to the next slide then. So Network Rail's scheme at Cambridge South only extends the 4 tracks as far north as Long Road to adjacent to the Sixth Form College. So what we're going to need to do is then extend the additional tracks as far as Cambridge Station. And it's highly likely that we can build those tracks within the existing Network Rail land, but again, we need to do more design to just confirm that. And then on the next slide, just to explain a little about our emerging option. So we need to replace the long road bridge, the A1143, because we need a wider structure. The existing railway with the additional tracks wouldn't fit through the existing bridge. And then we need to remodel the southern approach into Cambridge Station, just to ensure that trains can get onto the right tracks to access particular platforms. Again, we've not designed this, we know it needs to be done, but what we will of course need to do is look at how it can be done with minimum disruption to existing services. And then on the next slide we talk about Cambridge Station itself. That's where our scheme ends, of course. We'll connect there with the mainline railway services, and of course for many of our customers this is going to be either the start or end point of their journey. Cambridge has got 4 terminating platforms, bay platforms, and 4 through platforms. When we add our service, that means that new platforms are going to be needed, and it's already a busy station, of course. On the next slide, we show a little bit more detail on Cambridge Station. 2 new platforms, as I say, will be needed. They'll be through platforms, so they'll allow trains to continue northwards if necessary, but just to emphasise, our trains are going to terminate at this station. And as I said in just around a previous slide, most likely we'll locate those on the east side of the station. So that's the route as far as Cambridge. If we move on to the next slide, thank you. So far we've focused on the scheme which enters Cambridge from the south and the east. But as you may know, many people have contacted us to just ask us to look again at the potential for a route which enters Cambridge from the north. And so we've done this. It was looked at in previous consultations, but we've done this in preparation for the consultation that we're now running. You'll have seen that our emerging preference for the route to Cambourne from the west, from Bedford, is to follow the A428 corridor and to build a station north of Cambourne. So what we've done is to assume that this is our starting point for the northern route. So a northern route is technically feasible. There's no question about that. It can be done. But what we've looked at is how well it compares with the southern route, which we've been proposing, which I've just talked about, both in operational terms and its impacts on the environment and on land and property along the route. So a northern route would cross the A14 between Bar Hill and Girton, which is quite a wide road at that point, as you probably know, and so we need quite a major bridge structure there. And it could possibly have a station at Northstowe and Oakington, but it is crossing through that area some quite low-lying land, floodplain really, which so therefore considerable length of the railway would need to be built on embankment or on a viaduct. It then joins the West Anglia Main Line south of Waterbeach Station, just near Milton, crosses the A14 again, and will continue into Cambridge along this line, which we'd need to widen to accommodate the extra rail traffic as far as Cambridge Station. So if I go on to the next slide, there's a little bit more detail on what that actually means in terms of numbers. What you can see is that the track, in terms of track length, there's not much difference. Actually, it's a little bit longer to take a northern route into Cambridge, but not very much. But because of the extra station and because the line speed is lower than on the Anglia Main Line, it's going to take longer to enter Cambridge that way. The Anglia Main Line has a lower running speed north of Cambridge than it does to the south. Also, the northern approach requires more bridge structures, and there'll be more properties that are close to the railway. But crucially, also the northern approach would probably require the demolition of between 39 and 84 properties. And although obviously we want to try and minimise the number of properties that are affected in that way, we've all the way through this scheme tried to design it in a way that minimises impact on people's homes. But I think it's clear that it's going to be more difficult to avoid that on a northern route than a southern route. And I guess a further point to note is that we still want to access Cambridge South Station. I mentioned it earlier on, and in order to do that, we need to run the service through Cambridge Station on a widened railway down to the new Cambridge South stations where trains would need to turn around. it's not how it's been, it's not how Cambridge South Station has been designed. Network Rail would need to create terminating platforms as part of their scheme. And we'd need to turn the trains around at that point. So we would like your views on the northern approach into Cambridge, and obviously look forward to hearing what you've got to say about that. So that's the end of my section. And I'm now going to hand over to one of our land experts to just talk about the impact of the scheme in terms of those who are affected, in terms of their properties being affected, and what can be done in terms of compensation. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. I'm here. Yeah. So my name's Jörn Pace. I'm the land and property manager at East West Rail. We also have some other members of our land team on the call this morning who can help answer any questions you may have. So one of the key roles of the land and property team is to consult with landowners who could be potentially affected by the scheme and keep them updated on the proposals as they develop from this early stage. We will endeavour to keep our works within the existing railway bounds. However, inevitably, with a project of this size and nature, there may be additional land requirements. At this stage, we don't know for certain the land and property which will be needed, and we're consulting on a number of options. We'll be able to provide some further information by the point of our statutory consultation. We're actively talking to landowners to give them the further information about the scheme, discuss the project timeline, and answer any questions they may have. And through speaking to landowners and gaining feedback, it will also help us understand the land use and how we can keep our negative impact as minimal as possible. Whilst we're at an early stage, we're consulting on a discretionary purchase scheme, the need to sell scheme, and if introduced, this would provide support to those who have a pressing need to sell. It would be introduced at the point of the preferred route alignment or option announcement point, which is expected to be later this year or early next year. We're looking for feedback on what people think about it and if it's the right mitigation. There's further information on our website within a section focused on land and property. And this contains a number of guides, such as on the need to sell scheme and compensation. And there are also feedback forms, which we're encouraging people to return back to us, and details on how to get into contact with us. We have a dedicated team who can talk to landowners about their concerns and answer any questions. I'll now pass over to Hannah, who will discuss the consultation further.
Absolutely, thanks so much, Jon. That's very helpful. So before we go into Q&A, just some little pieces really about the function of the consultation and how we're moving forward. So today is an opportunity for us to run through the main sections that we're consulting on and to get an initial view of your questions and to try and understand more about what your initial thoughts are. Later on in the consultation period, we'll have another session with the same focus on the same geographical area, which, people will have had a longer chance to read through the documents and will have had a chance to kind of formulate deeper thoughts. So we imagine that will probably be a little bit more discursive, and we're having some thoughts internally about the most useful way, I think, for communities for those sessions to run. All of the documents are available online and have been since the beginning of the consultations. That's consultation document and the technical report. You also should have received a summary document now, which is a sort of 24-page summary of the consultation that went to 270,000 addresses in that consultation zone that we showed at the beginning. We've got our community hub online as well, which is a resource that we've had since last year, where you can write questions and give us your ideas and thoughts. And we've also got a virtual consultation room that was launched at the beginning of this week, and obviously these events that you're coming to as well. So this is really about how we can make sure that you've got the right information and that you're seeing us and that you're able to sort of connect with us. There's lots of ways that you can get involved and work with us as well. So as we said, we've got virtual consultation rooms. They're open from the 12th of April all the way through to the 9th of June. They're providing information on each section of the consultation, full list of documents. We've got little videos that kind of help people navigate around. So do have a look. It's quite a good interactive space. The online public events, we were holding 12. We're thinking about a couple of extra ones as well. We've had to cancel one this weekend because of events around obviously the funeral of HRH. So we're looking to move those around. So a series of 10, I think I'm back. A series of 10 2-hour live chat sessions. That's a great opportunity actually to have a more discursive conversation with us. We're aware that these events, because of their nature, we've got a lot of people coming in and we can't always get around to everyone's questions, but by using a live chat event, you can ask your question. We've got all of our experts on standby who can have a conversation with you online in sort of real time. If, of course, you can't join that session, you can add your questions into the live chat box, which is in the virtual consultation room. And when the sessions open up, the experts will get those questions triaged out to them. We have a dedicated phone line, which is a great way of getting in touch, asking for documents, asking for clarifications, and asking to be pointed towards things. So there's lots of different ways that you can get in touch with us throughout the consultation and make sure that we're giving you the information that you need to make some decisions and to come up with your views. So I think now's a good opportunity for us to go into the Q&A session. Just to recap slightly on the Q&A, the pieces that I said at the beginning of the meeting. We will aim to get through as many of the questions as we possibly can in the time available, and we've got half an hour to do that, which is great. We'll be grouping questions together because I can see already from the chat there's some people that are asking the same question. So we will get around as many of those as we can, and the best way of doing that really is going to group them. We won't be able to necessarily tell who's asking the questions, and even if we could, because of that GDPR stuff we were talking about at the beginning, we won't be attributing questions to specific people. We will be putting answers to some of our most frequently asked questions on the website beginning next week, and we'll start to roll that through as well. And of course, you can email us with questions as well. But I think the live chat events, as I said earlier, are a very helpful additional way of you being able to contact the team. So with that in mind, I think our team from ACOM and Barley have been noting what's been coming through on the chat and probably have some questions for us already.
Thanks, Hannah. Just going to start with electrification. We've had a couple of questions on that. One is, why is electrification not being considered from the outset? And also, will there be full electrification of the line? And also, will diesel freight trains be using the line? Chris or John, will you be able to answer those?
To take that. So the piece of railway between Shepherd Junction and Cambridge is currently electrified, and in order or in respect of the additional tracks that Ian talked about earlier, we would need to electrify those because of existing requirements for existing services being electrified. So that would be included in the proposals. In respect of electrification of East West Rail, we are designing at the moment for electrification. And why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because as emerging technologies come along that aren't diesel, so things like battery hybrid, things like hydrogen, as those technologies are emerging within the industry and they're starting to be trialled and used and developed in greater detail and equally proven, then we are leaving the options open as to what the longer term solution is. I did see reference in the question to diesel trains from day one. That's absolutely correct, that we're likely to be using diesel trains when we first open the railway between Oxford and Milton Keynes. However, it's our intention through the design and equally, whether it be full electrification, whether it be hydrogen, whether it be some other kind of hybrid approach with batteries, there will be an alternative solution when we get to Cambridge, and it isn't necessarily going to be diesel. So we're not putting ourselves in a position where we've defined the solution for traction power at this point in time. We're trying to keep those options open because, as I said, that developing technology gives us lots of other options. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Just in relation to that, we've also had a question in terms of the environmental impact of the diesel trains and how East West Rail intend to mitigate any pollution and noise from these. Would Michael, you be able to answer that, please?
Yes, hi. So yeah, I guess I'll just start by saying that, as has been mentioned, environment's been very much at the centre of what we've been trying to do to ensure that we consider the environmental aspects appropriately. And that, of course, considers air quality and noise amongst a number of other things. And we've applied, as part of our consideration, we've gone through a process of undertaking appraisal of different alignment options to ensure that we come up with alignments that, from an environmental perspective, work well. Now, more specifically on the noise side of things, we will, in line with government policy, we will look to avoid and minimise negative impacts on health and wellbeing of people and local residents and communities through any noise impacts. We will establish a noise and vibration policy, which will outline our commitment to managing noise and vibration during both construction and the operation of the project. And as part of a process, which is an ongoing process of environmental assessment, which goes from where we are now through to ultimately a full environmental impact assessment report and environmental statement as part of the DCO, so the Development Consent Order submission for the project. We will undertake a number of detailed assessments across the range of environmental issues, including noise and vibration and air quality. The purpose of that being to identify what the likely significant impacts are likely to be and the mitigation that we can put in place to manage those impacts. So we're at a relatively early stage at this moment in time, but we will be undertaking detailed assessments of those issues to understand the best way to mitigate. And for example, from a noise perspective, there's a number of things we can look at, from choice of trains. Different trains perform potentially better than others from a noise perspective. Track technology and how we use track can also have an impact on noise, and if there are impacts remaining, then there are ways to mitigate that, noise barriers being one obvious example of that. So we will continue to develop this as we move forward, and there'll be other opportunity for us to provide more detailed information on the impacts and our proposed mitigation as we go forward. And as John mentioned earlier, in terms of air quality and diesel, the traction power solution is important to that, and as we move forward and get a clearer understanding of what that will be, that will also inform our assessments and any potential mitigation that might be required from a air quality perspective as well. So it's very much ongoing work, but we have a really firm basis on the work we've done so far to move forward with as well.
I'm going to jump in very quick at this point and also say that we've got on our website on the consultation page a fact sheet called Our Approach to Mitigating the Impact of Noise and Vibration on Local Communities, which lays out exactly as Michael was saying. It's work that's progressing at the moment, but this lays out really the direction of travel that we're moving in, if you'll pardon the pun there. And we will also be publishing in the coming days some additional information, responding to feedback we've had already through the consultation, some additional information on freight, our approach to freight, and some additional information on our environmental activity as well. So that's all coming out in the coming days as well. So there'll be more information coming on the website.
Thanks, Hannah. I've had some questions in terms of the northern versus southern approach. What is the business case for northern versus southern approach, and will cost calculations be provided and broken down by section? Paul, would you be able to answer those questions, please?
Yes, certainly. We are doing further work on both the northern and southern approach, and we are looking at the cost details. These require a little bit of further work to be able to work them up properly, particularly in terms of the possession requirements required on the WAML. That is a piece of detailed planning that does take a little bit more time. And as soon as we have that, we will be in a position to be able to publish it, likely at either the PRA or the next statutory consultation. And similarly for the business case, we'll be doing a full business case update, and that will be included.
Thanks, Paul. Another question for you in terms of level crossings. we've had a question, will there be any impact on existing level crossings from the proposed changes at Shepworth Junction? And will new road options be provided at the Hawkston Road crossing?
Yes, so dealing with Hawkston Road first, yes, we will be looking at diversions of roads to be able to maintain the access between the villages at that location. That is critical. We understand how important that is. So we're not looking to sever connections. In terms of level crossings around Shepworth Junction, we won't be impacting anything south of Shepworth Junction on the West Anglia Main Line. Anything north of Shepworth Junction, Network Rail already have plans to go and close any of those level crossings as part of either the Cambridge South project or other projects, predominantly Cambridge South project. And so when we come along, those will already be closed.
Thanks, Paul. In terms of construction, we've had a question as to how will disruption be avoided during construction, as the roads are already very congested in the area. John, would you be able to pick that one up, please?
Yeah, thanks. In all aspects, as we develop our design, we're taking cognizance of all the local roads and all the traffic requirements that are needed, and we're developing modelling that will demonstrate that how we develop our construction impinges on the local community as little as possible. We're spending a lot of time working with our environmental team and our customer relations team to make sure that we can develop schemes that cause minimal impact.
I would say, just to jump in there slightly on the impact, the approach to mitigating impact of noise and vibration fact sheet that I referenced a moment ago, there are some sort of specific things that we're talking about there, using quieter or lower vibration construction methods and equipment, for example, putting up screens to reduce noise from construction work, scheduling particularly noisy activities for weekday daytime hours rather than evenings or weekends where possible, encouraging contractors to use prefabricated elements or manufacture components off-site, which minimises disruption on-site. So there are a number of things that we're already thinking through, and I think John and his team will continue to flesh that out as we go forward. Sorry for jumping in, John, but you were hiding your light under a bushel there, because I know that you've gone a little bit further in that thinking already.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. John's done a huge amount of work on this already, and it, you know, I think we're really conscious that that the impacts that you can't build anything of this scale with having no impacts at all. But we're conscious that we have to do everything we can to minimise those. And I suppose the other point, John, is that wherever we can, we'll use the railway as a means of transporting materials. We're building a railway on an existing railway. So where we can, we'll use the tracks rather than use the local roads. I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
It is, Ian. We'll work within our own boundary wherever we can.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you. Moving on to some questions we've had in relation to Cambridge Station. We've had a suggestion that would it be better to invest in a new platform at Cambridge North instead of providing new platforms at Cambridge, and why can't trains stop north of Cambridge and people then change trains? John, would you be able to answer that? Paul?
I can certainly start on that. Okay. In terms of Cambridge North, yeah, if we're approaching Cambridge Station from the north, Cambridge North Station would require additional platforms. It currently only has 2 through platforms and a bay platform, as opposed to Cambridge South Station. When it's built, we'll have 4 through platforms and will therefore be ready already. If we then proceed from Cambridge North Station into Cambridge Station, we would still need the additional platforms at Cambridge Station. Cambridge is congested. I appreciate that there is a little bit of spare space in the bay platforms from the north, but some of that is going to be taken up with new services between now and when we go live. And it's about having the right white spaces at the junction, the throat of the station, to be able to get the trains in the right places. So if we're going Cambridge North to Cambridge Station, we would require platform modifications to both stations.
And I think there's just adding, Paul, that we're trying to avoid a situation where people have to change trains to make the journey into Cambridge. The demand modelling that we've done shows that the demand is for trains to the centre of Cambridge rather than to Cambridge North or just Cambridge South. So we have to accommodate that, and having a direct service is very much one of our sort of core ambitions of this project, is to create that direct line all the way from Oxford to Cambridge.
Yes, absolutely, really good point.
I'm going to jump in really quickly just to pick off a couple of questions I can see coming through that I can answer very quickly. So we had a question about how many attendees we've got on this. I think we are on 30 now, and I think the maximum I've seen in the session is 35. And the other question that we can answer quite quickly is how will we make the recordings available? We'll make them available on the website. Just two little quick ones to pick off there.
Thanks, Hannah. I've had some questions in relation to the Shelford branch junction. What are the benefits of a grade separated solution versus a non-grade separated solution? And if an at-grade junction isn't possible, is a fly-under possible as opposed to a flyover, which will impact noise and views across the green belt? Paul, can you pick this one up, please?
Yes, certainly. So we're still looking at all options at Shelford Junction. In all honesty, our ideal is if we wouldn't have to put a grade separated structure in at all, for all the obvious reasons. But all options are being looked at. The key, again, in this location is it's all about operations and what we need to go and deliver in order to be able to work with the existing services that already run on the Royston line, so Thameslink services, and the services on the WAML. So we've identified the two options of an at-grade solution, so ground level solution, or a grade separated solution, depending on which platform we need to be serving at Cambridge Station. We need to do further work on that to see how those two solutions, what they look like. At the moment, the thoughts are that the going over the top of the existing WAML lines will be, whilst it will have increased visual impact, it will have a reduced impact in terms of everything else. Going under the existing line would pose a number of immediate issues, including complexity of getting under the existing line, the amount of land take required, and possible further impacts on things like the Nine Wells site, depending on how we can get back up. But further work is required to this, so we will look at all the options in that location in detail in the next phase of design. Thanks,
Paul. We've had a question on for sort of the passenger use. People remain in cars because rail fares in the UK can be expensive, and how will this railway be affordable for passengers that East West Rail expect to use it? Ian, would you be able to pick that one up, please?
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one to answer, of course, because we're not setting rail fares at this stage. But you know, certainly what we are doing in the way we design and the way we construct the railway is to make it as cheap as possible to operate in a way that gives a good service. So in reality, whilst fares are set on a national basis, of course, what we'll try and do is make this railway as economic as possible to operate, and therefore to try and keep passenger fares down very much as we can.
Thanks, Ian. Just in relation to that, the impact of COVID on passenger numbers has been raised. Is this going to affect how plans for the future plans for the railway?
So, I mean, nobody can fully predict the you know, the result of the changes in travel patterns that are going to result from what's happened over the last year, and people are clearly changing the way they work. Our sense, though, that for this railway, because what we're doing is connecting communities along the route from Oxford to Cambridge, is that actually we're providing the type of service that won't be affected too much by changes in travel patterns. So clearly, you know, there's bound to be some effect. We can't predict that fully at the moment, but it's something that we are, as we carry on with our design and as we carry on developing the business case, we're continuing to look at to just test and assess what happens as the country comes out of COVID and people start returning or not to previous ways of working. So it's a good question. It's something we're continuing to look at as we develop the scheme.
Just in my ongoing desire to let people know about more information on the website, there is more information on the website on our approach to COVID-19 at the bottom of the consultation page as well. There's sort of 3 pages answering the key questions that we've already had on those issues in a little bit more detail. But as Ian was saying, it's certainly something that we're thinking about at the moment. Yeah. We definitely believe our business case remains robust, but obviously that's something that we need to keep on modelling passenger numbers and working with government to understand what the trends are going to be long term. Yep. Sorry, I'm just making sure. Sorry, highlighting all the information.
Thanks, Hannah. We've had quite a few questions in asking whether sort of visual impressions, artist impressions will be made available of new lines and junctions. Is this something that East West Rail are looking to do?
So shall I comms answer and then hand over to the delivery team for the more technical side of it? In comms terms, absolutely. So we do want to publish those. Those will be available for the next consultation. And the upshot of that really is that you know, we're still working out exactly what the alignment should be and exactly where things should go, and that obviously impacts on what the visuals will look like. But I think I'll hand over to Paul or Ian, whoever wants to take that for some more detail.
Yeah, I'll pick it up initially. Paul may want to add something. I mean, we need to get to a point in our design where it's meaningful to present visuals sort that you're describing. So, you know, very much part of the process as we develop the scheme design is to present artist impressions to show what the railway will look like from different standpoints. You know, for the next stage consultation, we'll try and produce fly-throughs and things of that nature so that you can see things in 3D. But we need to get far enough into the design to make that a useful thing to do. We are working to improve the level of design, but whilst we've been looking at a number of routes, we've wanted to consult at this stage in the process to get your view on routes and route options before we go into too much more detail on design. So yes, definitely there's something we'll do, but we'd obviously need to do it at the right time when we've got confidence that we can provide you with something that's meaningful and useful in terms of how we consult. So yes, it's coming.
And I would definitely say that this is a tension that we know exists, that in order to be able to come out to people early enough in the process, that we're getting meaningful feedback on plans before they are solidified, that necessarily means that we're coming out to people without fully finished designs, and that's because we want the feedback to feed into the designs that we create. And we understand that there's probably, you know, a spectrum on which people sit, which is at one end people would like us to come out with fully fledged finalized designs to give certainty, and at the other end people really want to be able to feed into that at the earliest possible moment. And we know that that's a tension, and we think we found the right space on that spectrum, and we'll continue to work to find the right space on that spectrum. But exactly as Ian was saying, it's quite difficult sometimes to it's just not possible to come out at the moment with designs when we're at this point in the process. So with CGI, sorry, when we're at this point in the process, because they wouldn't be indicative of the final design, because that's something that we want your input on. So there is a tension there that I think we're trying to find the right balance on.
Yeah, but I think it's just important to say, Hannah, we're not attempting to be evasive in any way here. We just don't have the level of design to make it worthwhile. But as soon as we do, we'll want to put those in front of you so that you can give us your views on them.
Okay. Just in relation to the website and access, the issue has been raised about people not being able to view some of the links on their mobiles. Is this something we can look into, Hannah?
Yeah, sure. We did a full check of the website before we went live. So if there are links that aren't working, thank you very much for letting us know. I'm very happy to look into that. If you want to post in the chat links that aren't working, if that's something you remember, I'm very happy to look into that, because that's something that you know, we went quite far to make sure that it did. So if it's not, we'll work on that. Absolutely. I'll take that away as firm action to look into.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I think coming toward the end of some of the questions now, I've tried to group them by themes as much as possible. There's perhaps one more that if someone could answer on working with train operating companies and the sort of timing, the economic costs of having a short journey between Cambridge South and Cambridge Station. John or Ian, would you be able to pick that one up, please?
I can do. I'm not absolutely clear. I understand the question, Alison, but just to say, so we're clear. We are actively engaged with the rail industry, both Network Rail from an infrastructure perspective, and equally all the train operators that operate in and through that area. And that includes not just the passenger operators, but it also includes the freight operators, because there is already a significant amount of freight that travels through the Cambridge area. In actual fact, the capacity is not used that exists today, because there are 44 freight pass an hour already in the timetable and in the capacity through Cambridge, and freight use is based on open access and demand, so they will use as many as they have business to be able to use on that day. So we are actively engaged with all of those people, very much so around understanding future plans in respect of how services might change. And just be clear, sorry, I said 44 pass an hour. I'll just make sure that's 44 pass a day through Cambridge, just to be clear. We're engaged with them. Future timetable changes are important, because although we're working with them on capacity now and timetables now, we recognise that these things do change in the future. So one of the reasons why we keep talking to these operators, and we keep refreshing our timetable plans and keep refreshing our modelling, is because we know that these things will change over time. So what's true today may not be true in 2 years' time in respect of timetables. So we have to keep refreshing the models to ensure that we're as up to date as possible in that thinking. So yes, we are actively engaged.
Thanks, John. Just conscious of the time now, so I'll pass on to Hannah, I think, to discuss the next steps in the consultation.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for everyone for your questions. I'm aware that we've got questions that we haven't managed to respond to. We are going to take all of those away and work through them. Where possible, where we have contact details, we'll try and get back in touch with people to answer any questions we haven't got. There was we haven't managed to get around to. There was a specific question at the beginning around a longer response that was sent in by a member of the public. I think we've covered many of those questions already, but I have checked with my team while we've been on this call. They have got that email and they will be responding directly. So that's in the works as well. The next stage for us, so we've talked a little bit about what broadly what the consultation is about. We went through some of the detail, and then we went into how people can access that information and get more information. The key thing really for us, as I was saying earlier, about making sure that we're getting response to really help us, to make sure that we're getting comments fed in. So the key thing that would be very helpful to take away from this meeting is that there are multiple ways to give us feedback to the consultation. You can do that through the website. There's a form there. You can download a form, fill it in either online or by hand, scan that, send that to contact@East West Rail or consultation@East West Rail. You can send it by free post back to us. If you don't want to, you or people you know don't want to go online, you can call or email on their behalf. We get paper copies of that which we can mail out to them. So the really key thing is to make sure that we're getting that really rich feedback. That feedback is looked at in absolute detail. Every single piece of feedback that we get is analysed answer by answer, and we will collate all of that in a feedback report that will be published on the summarised rather than collated, to be absolutely clear, but rest assured every single piece is included in that analysis. On the side, obviously our technical teams are looking at that feedback as well, and working out where that fits into the design and how that can be used as we go through. So please do feedback to the consultation. We will be having more sessions later in the consultation period, and we have those live chat sessions as well. And we've also got contact at East West Rail where people can get in touch. So please do continue to keep in touch with us. The consultation closes on the 9th of June, so please make sure that any responses that you're sending in do come in before the 9th of June. And I think it really it's left to me to say thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we do hope to see you again, and we will be working through those questions and making sure that we're responding wherever we can. So thank you very much for your time.